Michelle Marie McGrath. Welcome to today's episode of Unclassified Woman, and today I'm talking to Star Khechara. Star, aka Miss Monetisation, is a passive income strategist and e-course expert for leading women. With her online academy, Passive Income Rocks, Star has helped hundreds of women and a couple of dudes monetize their passions, knowledge and expertise into automated recurring income for maximum impact. And you can find out more about her work at starkhechara.com. That's starkhechara.com. And Star has created the Wealth-Gasm, and she advises women to bank their brain because smart women sell their knowledge and not their time. And that sounds like great advice, actually. And I really enjoyed this conversation. One of the things that I really value is when people are completely honest, even when that's not necessarily going to be popular. And I have the sense that Star is voicing a lot of things that maybe some people would think about, but they would not necessarily say out loud. And so I think it's really valuable that we have more and more of these open conversations and really support women in living a life that's right for them, even though that may not be necessarily popular with family or friends or peers, so that we don't feel like we're living someone else's life or trying to people please, but actually making ourselves miserable. So I really applaud that level of honesty. And so I really hope you enjoy the conversation. So hi, Star. So great to have you here today.
Hello.
And thanks so much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And so just to give us a bit of context and background, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and whether you've not had a child due to personal choice or whether it's been more circumstantial?
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. Okay, well, I just always knew I didn't want them. I was just one of those people that, from a young age, I really knew I didn't want kids. I've always really felt like I wanted to live quite a different life to most people. I never really wanted the whole marriage and mortgage and job, kids life at all, like none of it. And kids, I just felt would have held me back from doing my freedom life, and I love to travel. I'm very spontaneous, and I like sleeping in late in the morning. So all of those things are kind of pretty difficult to do if you have children. But I also just never felt the urge to do it. Yeah. My sister's a complete opposite. She's always liked the idea of kids, and she always had like a baby doll thing that she carried around. Whereas I was just more like, I'd rather be climbing a tree or something. So yeah, I've never felt the urge. And I did wonder like if it would come to me, as I got older. But I can safely say at age 40 that not only did the urge never come, but the lack of urge to have children has got stronger and stronger.
Well, that's great that you're that clear and that you've got so much clarity about it, because obviously it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a bit of a wobble. When I got married when I was 20, oh God, how old was I? 27. I got married when I was 27, and he really wanted kids. And it kind of, you do feel that kind of pressure of like, oh, now I'm married, this is what I'm supposed to do. And, it was at the age when my friends were starting to have children and everyone around me was having kids. And I was just like, oh, well, maybe no one feels like they're ready. Maybe that's just that,
Yes.
Maybe I don't feel like I'm ready because everyone feels like this.
Yeah.
And I did have a bit of a wobble for about 2 years, but I was still like, oh, the idea made me feel ill, sick. So I actually ended my marriage because I strongly didn't want children.
Yeah. Wow. And so that's really interesting what you say, in that you thought, well, maybe everybody feels like this, because we're so conditioned to think, well, this is just what you do. This is the order of events. You know, you grow up, you meet a nice man, you get married, you have children. And of course, instinctively, you were thinking, well, maybe I don't want to do that. And like knowing that from a young age. So, but isn't it interesting how even though you knew that intuitively, we then are so like brainwashed, if you like, that you get to a point where you start thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe everyone just feels like this. Maybe maybe that's just how I feel now, but then if I go ahead with it, it'll all be fine and hunky-dory sort of thing, rather than thinking, well, I actually knew that was not really the right thing for me. But it's interesting how we feel that pressure.
Yeah, it was really odd because I've never, I hear a lot of people in this kind of world of like child-free, speak about the pressure they have from others. I've never experienced that, but it was more like a kind of, he really wanted them, and he went on and on and on about it, like literally, within months of us getting married. And I was like, whoa, we never discussed this. Top tip, ladies, if you don't want kids, discuss that before you marry someone.
Yes. Yeah.
Get the important things out of the way. But it was just that kind of thing, like, I didn't really like deeply question or think there's something wrong. I just kind of more was musing about it, just like, oh, maybe everyone just feels like this. And I would be asking friends, and some of the girls I knew were having kids, were a bit younger than me, and she said, oh, I didn't. Yeah, no one feels really ready. So I thought, oh, so it's normal to feel like that. So it's not just that I don't want kids, it's just normal to feel like this. So then that was the real danger point, because then I started to think that was normal. And then, but it's still okay to then go and have kids. And I was even asking people about having kids. And then the more I listened, the more I just thought, yuck, this all just sounds disgusting and horrible.
Do you know, but it's probably true that no one feels, in inverted commas, ready. But I guess it's if the desire's there, when somebody knows that, of course, they can't be fully prepared for that until the child, until the baby's there and they're working through that experience. But I guess it's whether the difference is they feel the desire to have that experience, whereas like yourself and many other women who just don't feel that urge. And I've had this conversation so many times around how, well, I just never had that whole ticking clock thing and biological, urge thing, where it was that almost like a physical craving to make that happen. So many women say they just don't have that.
Yeah, no, I really don't have that at all. I mean, I get nervous if I have a houseplant. I'm really, I really don't like being responsible for a living thing, which is weird because I'm actually very connected to living things. I'm vegetarian, like I really care about the planet very deeply. So I see myself as a caregiver of this planet. Yeah. But, when it comes down to like the little things, I get nervous. Like I've already killed a houseplant this week, and I just feel devastated because I'm just like, oh God, I really shouldn't try to take responsibility for something else's life.
And so
I'm just not good at it.
It's funny and so interesting that you say as well that your sister's the complete opposite. And so did you never feel any pressure or persuasion from her at all, or any other family members?
No, thank goodness. I've made my desires very clear from an early age. I'm quite blunt as a person. I just kind of say it as it is, so I'm the sort of person that would, my friends know that I don't like the way dogs smell. They know I don't want kids. They know I don't eat wheat, et cetera, et cetera. I'm very clear and upfront about my stuff. So I've always been outspoken about it. And then, my sister was opposite. But no, it's great because I was so relieved when she had a child, because I'm like, whew, at least, my mum's
pressure's
got a grandkid now. The pressure's off, because she's younger. But it's great now because now I can be an aunt. And I actually like the idea of that, and I'm not very good at the whole baby thing. But once they get to like 2 or 3 and older, I kind of like, they're kind of cool to play with then. So then I can get involved, But also there's that whole social stigma. Like you go to someone's house and they're like, we've just had a baby. Would you like to hold the baby? And I actually want to say, no, I don't. I really don't want to hold your baby. Like, but it's rude to say that. So even if I don't have my own, I still feel like, you still have to kind of like play along a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's right, because you don't want them to think you're being offensive. And that's, again, ridiculous. But again, these are these social niceties that we're subjected to, like that you'd feel that if you said, well, no, I don't want to, then would they then be thinking, well, what's wrong with you? So it's just, it's very interesting that how this all plays out in our sort of social behaviours and what's deemed as the norm, So it's fascinating, really. But I think the more we have these really open conversations about it, the more, the more open that people will become to different alternative viewpoints, really, on it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to get this out there and to know that people aren't alone if they don't want kids, because it is difficult if all of you get to that certain age, and all of your friends have kids, because it does kind of change your friendships, and some friendships die because they then end up just wanting to hang around with other parents, and I don't want to hang around with little babies screaming, so it's kind of like you can friendships and everything. It's like really like polarizing, isn't it?
It can be. And I think it's a really good point. Friendships can really change, especially during that time when the children are so young. And of course, it can be all consuming for the mother, trying to sort of do everything. I mean, I think a lot of young, mums with young children deserve a medal, really. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't survive with the sleep deprivation. So just that alone sends me insane. So I think hats off to them, really. They need more support.
Yeah, I mean, you've really got to want them to have them, haven't you?
Yeah, you really do, don't you? And again, though, there is this fantasy of motherhood that's sold. So you can understand why it's then the reality of it is a massive shock.
God, yeah. I mean, every person I know that's had a child, when I said, oh, what's it like, being a parent now? And they always say the same word. Exhausting.
Yeah.
That's always what they say. It's exhausting.
Yeah, they don't put that in the brochure, though, do they?
No, they don't. It's all pastel pink roses and milk breasts and glowing skin and whatnot. And then no, they don't tell you that everyone looks about 10 years older within the first 5 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, God, I mean, one of the most challenging parts of being a woman, for sure. So, you were saying like you didn't really feel that pressure from your family, and obviously your sister felt completely different. Did you ever experience judgment from other people? And I know some women have said, well, I didn't really experience judgment, but I had things like jealousy and envy and a lot of snidey comments thrown my way. A lot of, oh, it's okay for you. You don't understand, that type of inference.
Yeah, I haven't really had any pressure because everyone, out of all the people I know, I'm probably the most outspoken person. Yes. So if I say something, I mean it, so everyone knows not to go there. But it is weird. I've noticed like changes in friendship dynamics because they want to hang out with other parents. I also notice things like, sometimes I've had friends with small, especially when the children are kind of like at toddler age. They'll want to come over for a visit and they'll say, is your house child friendly? And I'm just like, I just want to like tell them to, it actually makes me angry when people say that, because I'm thinking, one, I wouldn't have a clue what that looked like. And secondly, why the hell would someone with no kids by choice keep a child friendly house just in case someone popped around with a child? You see, I'm getting angry talking about it. Yeah. Annoys me. It just annoys me that like, oh, like what? So everyone has to cater for everyone else's children now? Like even the people that don't want them?
Yeah. I suppose with that, they're like meaning, have you got loads of breakable things around? I don't want to wreck your house.
I don't know. I think some of them just really mean just like, it's more like they have, they want to, they want to be able to come around and relax with their child, I guess, without their child bashing their head in. But obviously I can't make that happen. I'm not going to change my house. So, I think that's like quite an odd thing for people to ask of people that don't have children. But then obviously the other thing happens where people's kids run riot in your house, which is annoying.
Yeah.
I tend just not to have kids come to my house anymore unless they're really well behaved. But my nephew's awesome. He's really cool because my sister's a brilliant parent, but so he's always welcome. But I sometimes find like other people's kids just make me nervous because I'm just like, I work from my house and I have expensive things and technology, and I really don't want them to be touched.
And so how do you think we can be more tolerant and understanding to each other? Like you say, often there can be these completely polar opposite opinions and desires between women. So how can we open up the conversation with that and try and close some of those gaps between motherhood and what Melanie Notkin, who's a New York-based writer, calls otherhood?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it is really difficult because I can totally understand why when my friends have kids, the friendship kind of starts dying because it's really like my house isn't suitable for them to come over. I don't really like hanging out with a screaming child. I was like, where is that middle ground? Where is that compromise?
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me, and I'm really not trying to be like an arse about this, but if I go to a restaurant and a baby does that shriek that they do, sometimes it actually hurts my ears. I mean, I'm not trying to be an arse and think, oh God, babies. It actually physically hurts my ears, and I'm like, I can't be around that because just to give a bit of backstory on that, I'm a highly sensitive person, so little noises like hurt my ears. So giant screamy ones really kind of like I almost drop dead at the noise. It doesn't mix, so it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, with my friends that've got children, like now they're a bit older. I have had some days out with friends and children and things like that, and it's been all right, but it's not my favourite thing to do. I have to admit, I'd much prefer to see my friend on their own so we can have adult talk, and that kind of thing. So I do find it's difficult to bring those things together because I think there's lack of understanding on both sides.
Yeah, totally. I think there really is. And it's important to be true to yourself and be honest as well. But then there's also times where you're trying to be tactful and not be offensive as well. And it can be tricky, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not very good at tact.
Also like if it's a close friend, you're thinking, well, obviously this is their child. I don't want them to be thinking I'm like this monster who's got, no feelings whatsoever. So it is tricky.
It is really tricky. I find it incredibly tricky because, it's one of those things, isn't it? No, like if you don't have there's this unspoken rule, and in fact I don't think it's even unspoken a lot of the time. There's this unspoken rule: if you don't have a child, you have no rights to say anything.
That's right. You're not entitled to have an opinion, basically.
Yeah, it's like you can't have an opinion, even if it's like in your own house or you're there. It's like, like I think that's one of the really big problems. There's this whole preciousness around parenthood sometimes, and it's like, how dare you tell my child what to do? And it's like, well, your child is trying to smash my house up. Like, I'll say what I like in that situation.
Well, exactly. And if they were actually keeping an eye on them and saying something, you maybe wouldn't need to, but then you're getting into like really difficult territory with that then as well. So I mean, you can just see how these things really blow up.
It's very difficult because no parent likes to think they're not parenting well. And so there is this, I mean, I think mothers are fragile anyway. You would be with lack of sleep, and doing all the stuff you have to do for a child. And then to have someone who doesn't even have kids say something that could be construed as you're not being a great parent. Yeah, of course, they're going to like blow their top. But on the other hand, if you're a parent and you take your child into someone else's home or into a public domain, I think you have a duty to make sure that is not wrecking everyone else's experience as well. So it's very difficult though, isn't it? I mean,
it is. And I suppose as well, look, a lot of that comes into the age of the child as well, which again, it's funny because I'm just laughing, thinking of some of my friends and their children. Some of them, behave so well. They're so good. But then, of course, you can't really reason with a 2-year-old. Like that's having a tantrum and screaming there's just no way, like I've got we've got young families living on both sides of us, both of them with toddlers, and I am not joking, like sometimes they sound like they're being murdered.
Yes.
I really feel for the parents, and I just think that, and we've had some funny incidents with our next door neighbour where like the dad often says, just stop it. They're going to be ringing the police next door. That you make it sound like you're being murdered, and he seriously says that. He's got a great sense of humour. But I think, well, yeah, it does sound like that actually, because they've got this really strong-willed little girl who just totally rules the roost. She's about 3 going on 30. And some of the conversations, I just think, oh my gosh, I don't know how they are doing that, because it's bad enough just having to listen, like, if we're sitting outside kind of thing. So it's quite funny. But I think, well, I wouldn't think it was funny if I was having to, deal with that every day. Like it's so never a dull moment.
Yeah. It's difficult because, if I'm somewhere where there's an absolute shrieking baby, I feel really bad for that parent, because I'm like, they've got to deal with that, like probably on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I'm also like, God, I'm going to kill somebody if I have to listen to that noise. And I think, I don't know if this is true, so anyone could like slate me online if this is not true, but it seems to me that when you have a child and you have to listen to it shrieking a lot, you become accustomed to it to an extent. To the extent where when you're in a public place, you don't realize how loud it is.
Well, I suppose you have to become accustomed to it.
I think they kind of like learn to filter it out. Yeah. But to me, I don't have that filter, at all.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it, that? So you wonder whether, well, they would have to, because they can't be like losing the plot every 2 minutes every time, because otherwise they just can't do it, can you?
No.
So, but I mean, it's interesting. It is tricky. And so, look, obviously it's not the role of every woman to be a mother, even if it's a biological ability and you're in perfect health and everything's there working, fine and ready to go. But it's not for every woman to play that role. We've all got different abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
exactly.
and like, we find meaning in different ways, don't we? We're all individual in that way. And also, obviously, it's one form of creative expression, having a child. So how would you say you express yourself creatively in other ways?
Oh, goodness, in so many ways. I love to dance. I love to be creative. I like building like graphics on my website. I like doing my businesses. Setting up businesses for me is a great creative act. And I'm writing books. I feel like writing book. I mean, when I wrote my first book, I even likened it, and I'm sure a load of mothers will slap me senseless for saying this, but I likened it to like giving birth, because it felt like I carried it for 9 months. Then there's this horrible, hard, painful bit at the end, which was my deadline.
Yes.
A big, horrible, painful push at the end. And then it was out in the world and I was all proud. And then, but I was like, I'm never doing that again. And then 2 years later, I'm like, oh, I fancy writing another book, So it was like the same trajectory of like...
Yeah. And that creative urge, I guess. And, you make a really interesting comment, because somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago that... A friend of a lady I was talking to had said, and this was somebody who'd never wanted children. She said, oh my goodness, I think I've got the urge to have a child. And she's a musician, this lady. And so she was like, okay, well, how does that feel? Like, well, I can feel this energy building, and I'm just really feeling like I want to have a child. And then a couple of weeks later, she came back and said, no, it wasn't that. It was actually, she wrote this whole piece of music. And then when she'd written it and finished it, she had this real sense of completion and satisfaction. And she said, that's what it was. it wasn't actually having a physical child. And so I thought that was a really interesting point, that people feel that creative urge, but maybe some people just assume that they need to have a child, and maybe it's actually a part of them calling to express themselves in a certain way or create something. So I think that is a really interesting area to explore, really. So, because it's natural, that the creative force, and even if you look at how energy works with like Chinese medicine and where things are stored in the body, you know, your creative energy is your life force. So it's how you want to show up and be in the world.
Yeah, and I think we all have that creative urge. We're all creators.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, but you know, like, why is it for women that creative urge has to be channeled into children? Like, no one expects a man to have a child.
Yeah.
You know, and I know a few artists, and especially the older ones that got kind of famous. They will have loads of kids, right? By different women, but they will not raise those kids because they're living the life of an artist, and their creation is to make art. Now, they just happened to have got some women pregnant by accident, you know, as it were, not on accident on their part, and so the women are left to raise the children. And I just thought, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, no one expects a man to have to give up their creativity to raise a child.
Yeah. I mean, it really is how we're socially conditioned. It really is. And, you know, in the same vein, there's not a lot of talk either about men who are child-free or childless. It's, you know, starting to be a little bit more of that conversation. But again, that can be another area that's completely ignored, really.
It is ignored because it's almost expected of the woman, like you say. But interestingly, when I was single and on the dating scene, I found it really hard to date people close to my age because they were getting to that point where they wanted to get married and have children, and I didn't want children. So I ended up having to date much younger guys. No bad thing, obviously, but you know, a nice little side effect. But still, you know, sometimes I wanted someone more mature, but then they were looking for a mother, you know, like someone to be the mother of their child. And I'm like, ew, I don't even want to have kids. I want to be out having fun. And so I ended up having to date people like 10, 15 years younger than me.
But what about going the other way and sort of dating somebody who's already got children and they're happy not to have more?
Well, I didn't meet anyone like that apart from weirdly enough, a 19-year-old. So I actually dated a very young guy that already had a child. And it's kind of, that was fine. You know, the child was like 4 or something. So we got on really well because they're cool at that age. I get to play with them. And I'm a great player, you know, because I think when you parent a child 24/7, you don't always have the energy to play with them. So someone like me, who's really young at heart and isn't tired out by raising children, is actually a great person to bring your kids to. Because I actually enjoy playing.
No, it's so true. It's funny, isn't it? So and also, you know, that you're just going to be with them for that limited time, so you can really enjoy it and be really present with them.
Yeah, totally. And I love it. And I do all the dressing up and I play with the toys and, you know, it's great fun. And then after about 2 or 3 hours, I'm done, you know, because my goodness, it's tiring. I honestly, as well, I hold my hats off to women that do this, because doing that as a job is the hardest job in the world. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but honestly,
it really is. It
really is. I mean, I'm about to set up my 3rd business, and I don't even work a fraction of the crazy work that a mother has to do.
Oh, it's 24/7. It really is. They don't get a break at all, do they?
And it's not even 24/7 of like a normal job. It's like 24/7 of someone needing you emotionally.
Yeah.
Like constantly, you know, I mean, it's that's crazy. Like, it's, you know, I don't know. My mum brought us up as a single mum. I don't know how single parents do it, because it looks like it's enough for 2 parents. So I don't know how single mums do it. And I think, honestly, they should be given like everything for free from the government to raise their children. I really believe that, because they're raising the next generation of people that are going to be the workforce of our country. So why the hell should they have to struggle to do so? It's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, very hard. Yeah, no, very hard for single parents. Absolutely. Like, it really is tough. And like you, I was brought up by a single mum as well. And I just think she works so hard to try and provide everything. And, you know, it's, yeah, very, very tough, very challenging. One of the things that is also quite an interesting topic is around the language that we use to describe people without children. So like childless and child-free, I feel they've got quite fairly negative connotations, really. I don't really like either of them, but it's just, I know we use these terms in how to describe and categorize people, and they're also search terms. So how can we evolve our language in this conversation in a way that's much more empowering, do you think?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because whenever the media writes about women, they're always defined by something that men are defined by. Like, you know, whether it's the size of their breasts to how many kids they've got. You know, there's always like some weird caveat, isn't there? Whereas a dude, they would just say, you know, Michael is a businessman. Whereas a woman, I mean, even that whole, like, I'm in the entrepreneurial movement. And so even like the word, you know, if a mother is an entrepreneur, they're called a mumpreneur. And I think that's a really bad term. It's like, it makes them sound like they're messing around. You know,
they're not being really serious. It's just this little thing they're doing on the side.
Hobby, oh, look at her, she's a little mumpreneur. And I think, oh, what a horribly, like, I don't know, just kind of like mocks the whole thing. And I think there is some terrible language around women, not just in the whole kids or not thing, but I don't mind the term child-free because I think it's better than childless.
I agree.
Childless is like, oh, you're childless, like you should have had them, but you didn't, you know? You lost them somehow.
But then with child-free, I always feel like that I immediately have this connotation of somebody skipping through the fields with no responsibilities whatsoever. And I think, well, that's not necessarily true either. You know, like, it doesn't mean if you haven't got children, does that then mean you don't have a care in the world? Well, not necessarily, no.
No, and I think, you know, and it's also that whole, I think we're getting past this kind of stereotype, but there's a whole thing like, oh, you know, you're a hard-faced bitch career woman or you're a mother, you know?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's like, what?
These two extreme faces of womanhood.
Yeah, like I have to, you know, I'm either in a power suit and have to chop my hair short and act like a man and be in business, which none of those things I do. Or I'm like soft and sweetly feminine and I have beautiful babies. There is lots of weird language. I don't know what language could be used. I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't describe it at all, would we?
Yes, well, that's right. We describe each other as women.
As women. Yeah, you're just a person. But you know, people like to find each other, don't they? And the keywords, you know, like you say, SEO, keywords, and just like terminology so people can connect with others. You know, if you were a vegan, you would use the word vegan to connect with others. If you were, you know, I don't know, if you love dogs, you would use those words to connect with others. But so it's just, I don't attach any emotion to those words. Yeah. It's just what it is. It's just a search term as far as I'm concerned. And I don't describe myself as any of them. I just write about me, Star, and people can draw what conclusions they will.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, thank you so much for your time. And so, can you share with us the best place where people can find you online?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, Facebook, like everyone. I have a Facebook page. What's my Facebook page? Wealth-Gasms, because I teach people about how to make money. But I have my website, which is my name, starkhechara.com. And I don't talk about children or not children. I just talk about business.
Great.
So they can seek me out there and see what crazy life I've had with my weird free-spirited traveling lifestyle.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.